mani padme mani padme mani padme mani padme mani padme mani padme.
There are moments in life when the weight of everything becomes unbearable. When you've poured your heart into something, a relationship, a dream, a goal, a path you believed in, and despite all your effort, all your sacrifice, all your determination, it feels like you're getting nowhere. The finish line keeps moving further away. The obstacles keep multiplying. And somewhere deep inside, a voice whispers, "Maybe it's time to give up." If you're watching this right now, you might be in one of those moments. Perhaps you've been fighting for something for weeks, months, or even years. Maybe you wake up exhausted before the day even begins. Maybe you've started questioning whether any of this is worth it anymore. Maybe you look at others who seem to have it all figured out, and you wonder why it has to be so hard for you. I want you to know something, and I need you to really hear this. You are not weak for feeling this way. You're not a failure because you're struggling. And you're certainly not alone. Every single person who has ever achieved anything meaningful has stood exactly where you're standing right now. They've felt this same exhaustion. They've had these same doubts. They've wondered if they should just let go and walk away. The difference between those who eventually succeed and those who don't isn't talent, or luck, or even resources. It's what they chose to believe in these darkest moments. Today, I want to share with you 5 Buddhist reminders that have helped countless people find strength when they felt they had none left. These aren't just beautiful philosophical ideas meant to sound inspiring. They're practical, profound truths that can fundamentally shift how you see your struggle right now, in this very moment. The Buddha spent his entire life studying suffering, not because he was pessimistic, but because he understood that suffering is universal and that within it lies the key to transformation. He discovered that our relationship with difficulty determines whether it destroys us or develops us. So before we begin, I want you to do something. Take a deep breath. Feel your body in this chair, on this bed, wherever you are. Notice that despite everything you've been through, you're still here. You're still breathing. You're still searching for answers. And that, in itself, is an act of courage. You're exactly where you need to be. Let's walk this path together. Before we dive into the 5 reminders, we need to understand something fundamental about Buddhist philosophy that changes everything. When the Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree over 2,500 years ago, his very first teaching after enlightenment was what we call the 4 Noble Truths. And the first of these truths was startling in its simplicity and honesty. Life contains suffering. Not life might contain suffering if you make mistakes. Not suffering happens to bad people. Simply, suffering exists. It's woven into the fabric of existence itself. Now, when most people first hear this, they think Buddhism is pessimistic, that it's a philosophy of defeat. But this couldn't be further from the truth. The Buddha wasn't being negative. He was being honest. And in that honesty lies tremendous freedom. Think about how we typically approach difficulty in modern life. We're taught that if we just work hard enough, plan well enough, be good enough, then we can avoid suffering altogether. We're sold this idea that happiness means the absence of problems, that success means smooth sailing, that a good life is one where nothing goes wrong. And what happens when reality doesn't match this fantasy? When we encounter obstacles, setbacks, failures, we think something is terribly wrong. We think we've failed. We think the universe is against us. We think we should give up because clearly we're on the wrong path. But here's what the Buddha understood. Suffering isn't a bug in the system. It's a feature. It's not a sign that you've gone wrong somewhere. It's simply part of being human, part of being alive, part of engaging with a world that's constantly changing and often unpredictable. The Buddha used the metaphor of the two arrows. When something painful happens, let's say you fail at something important to you, that's the first arrow. It hurts. It's real pain. But then we shoot ourselves with a second arrow. Why is this happening to me? I must be cursed. I should just give up. I'll never succeed. The first arrow is inevitable. Life will throw challenges at you. But the second arrow, that's optional. That's the suffering we create by resisting the first arrow, by believing it means something catastrophic about us or our future. When you understand this distinction, something profound shifts. You stop seeing your struggles as evidence of failure and start seeing them as simply part of the journey. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What can I learn from this? How can I grow through this?" There's a beautiful Zen saying, "The obstacle is the path." Not, "The obstacle is blocking the path," or "The obstacle is a detour from the path." The obstacle is the path. Your struggles aren't preventing you from reaching your destination. They are the very means by which you get there. Think about a diamond. How is it formed? Through immense pressure, deep underground, over millions of years. The same carbon that becomes coal becomes a diamond, depending on the conditions it endures. The pressure doesn't ruin the carbon. It transforms it into something precious. Or consider a butterfly. Inside the cocoon, it struggles violently to break free. If you were to help it by cutting open the cocoon, you would actually doom the butterfly. Why? Because that struggle is what forces fluid from its body into its wings, giving it the strength to fly. Without the struggle, it would emerge with weak wings and never take flight. Your struggle right now might be the very thing that's preparing you for what comes next. It might be developing capacities in you that you'll need later. It might be teaching you lessons that can only be learned through difficulty. This doesn't mean suffering is good, or that you should seek it out, but it does mean that when suffering arrives, as it inevitably will, you can choose to see it differently. Not as a punishment or a failure, but as a teacher, as a crucible, as the fire that refines gold. So when you feel like giving up, the first question to ask isn't, "How can I escape this?" but rather, "What if this difficulty is exactly what I need right now? What if the universe isn't working against me, but is actually providing exactly the challenge I need to become who I'm meant to be?" Let's go deeper into this first reminder. Suffering is part of the path, not a sign you're on the wrong one. We live in a culture obsessed with comfort and convenience. We have apps that deliver food to our door, streaming services that eliminate waiting, instant messages that connect us immediately. We've been conditioned to believe that friction is the enemy, that any resistance means we're doing something wrong. But nature tells a different story. Every living thing that grows must push against resistance. A seed doesn't gently float to the surface. It has to break through hard soil in complete darkness. A chick doesn't peacefully emerge from an egg. It has to peck its way out, exhausting itself in the process. A salmon doesn't drift downstream. It swims upstream against powerful currents. The resistance isn't preventing growth. The resistance is the growth. The Buddha himself understood this deeply. After he left his palace and began seeking enlightenment, he spent 6 years in extreme ascetic practices. He nearly starved himself to death. He pushed his body to its absolute limits. And he got nowhere. He was still suffering, still searching, still without answers. Then came the moment that changed everything. He sat under a fig tree and made a vow. I will not move from this spot until I have found the truth. For 49 days and nights, he sat in meditation, and during this time, something extraordinary happened. Buddhist texts describe that he was assaulted by Mara, the personification of delusion, temptation, and death. Mara sent beautiful visions to distract him, terrifying images to frighten him, voices of doubt to undermine him. You're wasting your time. This is pointless. Give up. Go back to your comfortable palace. You're not special enough to achieve enlightenment. Every single voice of doubt you've ever heard in your own mind, the Buddha heard it too. Every temptation to quit, he felt it. Every moment of thinking, this is too hard, I should just give up, he experienced it. But here's the crucial part. He didn't interpret these challenges as signs he was on the wrong path. He understood them as the very obstacles he needed to overcome to reach enlightenment. The difficulty wasn't a detour, it was the destination itself. When he finally achieved enlightenment at dawn, it wasn't because the challenges stopped. It was because he changed his relationship with them. He stopped resisting the resistance. He stopped fighting the difficulty. He simply sat with it, observed it, understood it, and in that understanding, he became free. Now, let's bring this to your life right now. Whatever you're struggling with, maybe it's a business that isn't growing as fast as you hoped, a creative project that keeps hitting walls, a personal transformation that feels impossible, a relationship that requires constant effort. You've probably thought at some point, if this were really right for me, wouldn't it be easier? This is one of the most seductive and destructive lies we tell ourselves. We think ease equals alignment, that struggle equals wrongness. But the truth is far more nuanced. Some things are hard because they're wrong for you. This is true. If you're constantly fighting against your own values, your own nature, your own deepest knowing, then yes, that friction is telling you something. But many things are hard precisely because they matter, because they're pushing you to grow, because they're asking you to become more than you currently are. The difficulty isn't a red flag. It's the price of admission to the next level of your life. Think about anything you've ever achieved that you're genuinely proud of. Was it easy? Or did it require you to push through moments when you wanted to quit? Did you have to learn new skills, develop new patience, cultivate new resilience? The things that come easily rarely change us. It's the things that challenge us, that demand more of us than we think we have to give, that actually transform us. There's a concept in metallurgy called work hardening. When you repeatedly stress metal, it doesn't weaken. It actually becomes stronger and more durable. The stress changes its internal structure in ways that increase its strength. You're being work hardened right now. Every time you choose to continue despite difficulty, you're not just moving toward your goal. You're fundamentally changing who you are. You're developing capacities that will serve you for the rest of your life. So the question isn't, is this too hard? The question is this difficulty making me stronger, or is it diminishing me? Am I growing through this, or am I being destroyed by it? There's a profound difference between productive struggle and destructive suffering. Productive struggle stretches you, but doesn't break you. It's hard, but you can feel yourself expanding to meet the challenge. Destructive suffering, on the other hand, violates your boundaries, contradicts your values, and leaves you feeling smaller rather than larger. Learning to tell the difference is one of life's most important skills, and it requires honest self-reflection, not just pushing through everything because suffering is part of the path. But if your struggle is the productive kind, if you can sense that something important is happening beneath the surface, even when the surface looks like failure, then the difficulty isn't a sign to quit. It's a sign you're exactly where transformation happens. So, how do you actually work with this teaching when you're in the thick of struggle? How do you shift from, I should give up, to, this difficulty is teaching me something? First, you need to develop what Buddhists call wise discernment. This is the ability to see clearly without being swept away by emotion. When you're overwhelmed, your perspective becomes distorted. Everything feels more permanent, more catastrophic, more impossible than it actually is. The Buddha taught a practice called noting, or mental labeling. When a strong emotion or thought arises, instead of identifying with it completely, you simply note it. Ah, this is the feeling of wanting to give up. This is the thought that I'm not good enough. This is fear about the future. This might sound simple, almost too simple, but it's revolutionary. By naming what's happening, you create a tiny bit of space between you and your experience. You move from, I am a failure, to, I am experiencing the thought that I'm a failure. This space is where freedom lives. Try this right now. Think about whatever is making you want to give up. Notice the sensations in your body. Notice the thoughts in your mind. Now say to yourself, this is difficulty. This is struggle. This is the feeling of wanting to quit. Can you feel how that shifts something? You're not denying the difficulty. You're acknowledging it clearly, while also not being completely consumed by it. Second, practice reframing questions. Instead of asking, why is this so hard? Ask, what is this difficulty trying to teach me? Instead of, when will this end? Ask, who am I becoming through this? These aren't just positive thinking tricks. They're fundamentally different ways of relating to your experience. The first set of questions positions you as a victim of circumstances. The second set positions you as an active participant in your own transformation. A powerful Buddhist practice is keeping what's called a difficulties journal. At the end of each day, instead of just listing what went wrong, you write, what was difficult today? What did this difficulty reveal to me? What strength did I develop by facing it? What would I not have learned if this had been easy? Over time, you start to see patterns. You start to recognize that your greatest periods of growth have always come during your most challenging times. This doesn't make the current difficulty easier, but it gives it meaning. And when something has meaning, it becomes bearable. There's a Holocaust survivor named Viktor Frankl who wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. In it, he describes surviving the Nazi concentration camps and observing who survived and who didn't. What he discovered was stunning. It wasn't the strongest who survived, or the most optimistic, or even the healthiest. It was those who could find meaning in their suffering. He wrote, "In some way, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning." This is pure Buddhist wisdom, discovered in the most extreme circumstances imaginable. You might think, but my struggle isn't as significant as surviving a concentration camp. And you're right, but the principle remains the same. When you can see your difficulty as serving a purpose, whether that's developing your character, teaching you valuable lessons, or preparing you for something ahead, it transforms from something to escape into something to learn from. Third, practice the zoom out technique. When you're in the middle of struggle, your perspective shrinks. All you can see is the immediate pain, the current obstacle. But the Buddha taught that this narrow view is one of the main sources of suffering. Imagine you're hiking up a mountain. Halfway up, you're exhausted, sweating, out of breath. If all you focus on is the pain in your legs and the steepness of the trail right in front of you, it's unbearable. But if you pause and look at how far you've already come, if you remember why you started this hike, if you imagine the view from the summit, suddenly you find strength you didn't know you had. This is zooming out. It's seeing your current difficulty as one chapter in a much larger story, not the entire story itself. Ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? In 10? What will I be grateful for having learned from this experience when I look back on it? Often, we're so consumed by present pain that we forget our own history. We forget all the other times we thought we couldn't continue, but did. We forget all the obstacles we've already overcome. We forget our own resilience. Make a list, right now, if you can, of 3 difficult periods in your life that you've already survived. Maybe it was a devastating breakup, a job loss, a health crisis, a financial struggle. Whatever it was, you survived it. You're here now, reading this, which means you have a 100% success rate at getting through your worst days. That's not luck. That's not accident. That's who you are at your core. Someone capable of enduring, of adapting, of finding a way forward even when the path isn't clear. Finally, practice what Buddhists call beginner's mind. This is the ability to approach each moment fresh, without dragging all your past failures and frustrations into it. Just because yesterday was hard doesn't mean today will be. Just because you failed last time doesn't mean you'll fail this time. When you feel like giving up, you're often projecting your current state endlessly into the future. You think, if it's this hard now, it will always be this hard. But that's not how life works. Everything changes. Your capacity grows. Circumstances shift. What seems impossible today might be merely difficult tomorrow. The Buddha taught, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." Your struggle right now is only right now. It's not forever. And you only have to handle it for this moment, not for all the imagined future moments you're worried about. Now we come to the second reminder, and this one has the power to completely transform your relationship with your own mind. You're not your thoughts. Right now, as you're reading this, there's probably a voice in your head. Maybe it's agreeing with what I'm saying. Maybe it's skeptical. Maybe it's thinking about something completely unrelated. What you need to do later. Something someone said to you yesterday. Worries about tomorrow. We're so used to this voice that we rarely question it. We assume it's us. We assume that what we think is who we are. And this assumption is one of the deepest sources of human suffering. Here's what's probably happening if you feel like giving up right now. Your mind is telling you stories. You're not cut out for this. Look at how many times you've tried and failed. Other people can do this easily, but not you. You're just not talented enough, smart enough, strong enough. Everyone's going to judge you when you quit, but it's better than continuing to fail. You should have given up long ago. You're wasting your time. This is never going to work. And because these thoughts are happening inside your head, in your own voice, you believe them. They feel like truth. They feel like you, speaking honestly to yourself. But here's what the Buddha discovered through years of deep meditation. These thoughts are not you. They're events in consciousness, like clouds passing through the sky. And you're not the clouds. You're the sky itself. This concept is called anatta in Buddhism, often translated as non-self or no self. It's one of the most profound and misunderstood teachings in Buddhist philosophy. The Buddha wasn't saying you don't exist. He was saying that what you think of as you is actually a constantly changing process, not a fixed, solid thing. Let me explain this in a way that's practical and immediately useful. Close your eyes for a moment and notice your thoughts. Just watch them. Don't try to change them or judge them. Just observe. Did you notice? There's the thought, and there's the awareness of the thought. There's the voice saying things, and there's the consciousness that hears it. These are not the same thing. If you were your thoughts, you wouldn't be able to observe them. You can't step outside of yourself to watch yourself, but you can step outside of your thoughts to watch them. This means you're something deeper than your thinking mind. The Buddha described the mind as a wild horse. Untrained, it runs wherever it wants, dragging you behind it. It dwells on worst-case scenarios. It replays painful memories. It catastrophizes about the future. It tells you you're not good enough, that you should give up, that nothing will ever work out. But just as a wild horse can be trained, so can your mind. And the first step in training is recognizing that you are not the horse. You are the rider. You are not the thoughts. You are the awareness that notices them. This distinction is everything. When you believe you are your thoughts, you're at their mercy. When a thought says, "I should give up," you immediately feel the impulse to quit. When a thought says, "I'm a failure," you immediately feel worthless. You have no choice but to believe and react to every thought that passes through. But when you recognize that you are the awareness, not the thoughts, suddenly you have space to choose. A thought can say, "I should give up," and you can observe it and say, "That's an interesting thought. I notice fear is present. I wonder what triggered this." You don't have to immediately act on it or believe it. Think about dreams for a moment. When you're in a dream, everything feels absolutely real. The fear feels real. The joy feels real. The situations feel real. But when you wake up, you immediately recognize it was just a dream, a mental creation that felt real while you were experiencing it. Many of our waking thoughts work the same way. They feel absolutely true and real while we're identified with them. But when we step back and observe them with some distance, we often realize they're just stories our mind is telling us, not objective reality. Neuroscience supports this Buddhist insight. Your brain is essentially a prediction machine. It's constantly trying to make sense of the world and predict what's going to happen next. To do this, it relies heavily on past experiences. So when you're struggling with something now, your brain pulls up every past failure, every time something similar didn't work out, every piece of evidence that you're not capable. It's not trying to hurt you. It's trying to protect you from disappointment and pain. But in doing so, it often creates a narrative that's far more pessimistic than reality warrants. Your brain also has what psychologists call a negativity bias. We're evolutionarily wired to pay more attention to threats and problems than to opportunities and successes. A human who assumed everything was safe and wonderful didn't survive as long as one who was constantly vigilant for danger. This means your mind naturally emphasizes what's wrong, what could go wrong, and why you should be afraid. It's not a character flaw. It's your brain doing what it evolved to do. But in modern life, this protective mechanism often works against us. When you're trying to achieve something difficult, your brain sees it as a potential threat. This is risky. You could fail. You could be humiliated. You could waste time and resources. So it generates thoughts designed to get you to stop, to play it safe, to give up. These thoughts aren't wisdom. They're not truth. They're your brain's attempt to protect you. And while protection has its place, growth requires taking risks that trigger this protective response. The Buddha taught a practice that modern psychology now calls cognitive diffusion. Instead of being fused with your thoughts, treating them as absolute truth, you create distance from them. You defuse from them. Here's how this works practically. When you have the thought, I should give up, instead of thinking, I should give up, you think, I'm having the thought that I should give up. Can you feel the difference? The first version feels like a command, a truth, something you must believe and act on. The second version is simply an observation, a noticing that this thought is present in your mind. Or try this. I'm noticing that my mind is offering me the thought that I'm not good enough. Suddenly, your mind sounds less like an authority and more like an overprotective friend who means well but isn't always helpful. You can even get playful with it. Oh, there's my mind again, doing its catastrophizing thing. Thanks, mind, for trying to keep me safe. But I've got this. This isn't positive thinking or denial. You're not replacing negative thoughts with positive ones. You're changing your relationship with thinking itself. You're recognizing that thoughts are just mental events, not facts about reality. So, how do you actually practice this? How do you develop the ability to observe your thoughts rather than being controlled by them? The Buddha's primary tool was meditation, but not in the way most people think of it. It's not about emptying your mind or achieving some perfect state of bliss. It's simply about practicing observation. Here's a simple meditation you can do right now, even for just 2 minutes. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes if that feels okay. Now, instead of trying to control or change your thoughts, just watch them. Imagine you're sitting by a river, and each thought is a leaf floating by. Some leaves are pleasant thoughts. Some are unpleasant. Some are neutral. You're not trying to grab the leaves or push them away. You're just watching them float past. When you get caught up in a thought, and you will constantly at first, that's not failure. That's just what minds do. The moment you notice you've been caught up, that noticing itself is the practice. Gently bring your attention back to watching. What you'll start to discover is astonishing. Thoughts arise on their own. You don't create them consciously. They just appear. And if you don't engage with them, they disappear on their own too. They're temporary, fleeting, constantly changing. You'll also notice that thoughts often lie. They tell you something is true, and if you investigate, it isn't. They tell you something is permanent, and it changes. They tell you something is desperately important, and an hour later you can barely remember what you were worried about. The Buddha called this seeing the true nature of mind. And once you see it clearly, it loses much of its power over you. Another practice is what I call the evidence investigation. When your mind tells you something definitive, "I'll never succeed at this," for example, treat it like a hypothesis that needs testing rather than a fact you must accept. Ask, "Is this absolutely true? What evidence do I have for this? What evidence contradicts this? Am I confusing a current difficulty with a permanent state? Am I overgeneralizing from a few experiences to all possible futures?" Often, you'll find that thoughts that feel completely true are actually based on very little evidence or on a selective reading of your experience that ignores everything that contradicts the negative narrative. For instance, "I'll never succeed" might be based on 3 recent failures. But what about the 50 things you have succeeded at in your life? What about the times you failed initially but eventually succeeded? What about the fact that you're still here, still trying? Which demonstrates a level of resilience that contradicts the never in your thought. This isn't about convincing yourself everything is fine when it isn't. It's about seeing clearly, without the distortion that anxious or depressed thinking creates. There's also a practice called naming the voices. Many of us have recurring patterns of negative thinking. Maybe there's an inner critic who's always pointing out your flaws. Maybe there's a catastrophizer who always imagines worst-case scenarios. Maybe there's a comparer who's always measuring you against others. Instead of treating these as you, give them names. "Oh, there's the critic again. The catastrophizer is really active today. The comparer is doing its thing." This might sound silly, but it's powerfully effective. It makes explicit what's actually true. These are patterns of thinking, not your core identity. They're habits of mind that developed for various reasons, probably to protect you in some way, but they don't define who you are. You can even talk to them. "I hear you, critic. I know you're trying to make me better by pointing out my flaws, but right now, I need encouragement, not criticism. So I'm going to thank you for your input and move forward anyway." The Buddha also taught the importance of right speech, but he's applied this not just to how we speak to others, but to how we speak to ourselves. Notice the words your mind uses. Does it speak to you with kindness and encouragement, or with harshness and contempt? Would you talk to a good friend the way your mind talks to you? Would you say to someone you care about, "You're pathetic. You should just give up. You're never going to make it"? Of course not. So why is it okay when it's directed at yourself? This recognition often creates a powerful shift. You start treating your own internal dialogue as something you have a choice about, not something you must passively accept. One of the most helpful practices I've found is keeping a thought journal. At the end of each day, write down the most prominent thoughts you had, especially the ones related to wanting to give up. Then, for each thought, write, is this thought helping me or hurting me? Is this thought based on facts or feelings? What would be a more accurate, balanced thought? What thought would be most useful for me right now? For example, thought, I'm never going to succeed at this. Helping or hurting? Hurting. This thought makes me want to quit. Facts or feelings? Feelings. The fact is, I haven't succeeded yet, not that I never will. More accurate thought. This is taking longer than I expected, and I'm learning as I go. Most useful thought. Each attempt teaches me something. I'm building skills and understanding that will serve me. Over time, this practice rewires how you think. You start catching unhelpful thoughts earlier before they spiral into full-blown stories that convince you to give up. There's also tremendous power in understanding that you don't have to believe every thought, and you don't have to act on every impulse. You can have the thought, I should give up, and choose not to give up. You can feel the impulse to quit and choose to continue. Thoughts and feelings are information, sometimes useful and sometimes not, but they're not commands. You're the one who decides what to do with them. The Buddha described this as the difference between primary and secondary suffering. Primary suffering is what happens, the difficulty you're facing, the tiredness you feel, the setback you experienced. You don't have much control over this. Secondary suffering is what you add through your thoughts about it. This means I'm a failure. This means I should quit. This means I'll never succeed. This layer of suffering is optional. It's created by believing your thoughts without question. When you practice observing your thoughts rather than identifying with them, you dramatically reduce secondary suffering. The situation is still difficult, but you're not adding layers of self-judgment, catastrophizing, and hopelessness on top of it. This doesn't make everything easy. You'll still face challenges. You'll still feel tired and discouraged sometimes, but you'll be working with one level of difficulty instead of two. And that makes all the difference. Remember, you are not the voice in your head. You're the vast, spacious awareness in which that voice appears. And from that awareness, you have far more freedom and choice than you might have ever imagined. So, how do you practice rest in a way that restores you rather than makes you feel guilty? How do you rest without feeling like you're giving up? First, you need to reframe what rest means. Rest is not the opposite of productivity. It's the foundation of sustainable productivity. Rest is not wasted time. It's an investment in your continued capacity. Rest is not weakness. It's wisdom. The Buddha taught a practice called wise effort. This means applying the right amount of energy at the right time. Not too much, not too little. Not pushing so hard you break, but not becoming complacent either. Think of it like tuning a stringed instrument. If the string is too tight, it will snap. If it's too loose, it won't make music. It needs to be tuned just right. Tension balanced with flexibility. Your life is the same. You need enough tension to create progress, but enough rest to prevent breaking. Here's a practical framework for rest that aligns with Buddhist wisdom. Micro-rest. These are brief pauses throughout your day. Taking 3 conscious breaths before starting a difficult task. Stepping away from your work for 5 minutes to look out a window. Drinking tea mindfully instead of while multitasking. These micro-rests prevent the accumulation of stress and exhaustion. They're like releasing steam from a pressure cooker regularly so it doesn't explode. The Buddha himself modeled this. In descriptions of his daily routine, he would teach, then rest, meditate, then walk, engage, then retreat. He understood that sustainable effort requires rhythm, not relentless pushing. Deep rest. These are longer periods of genuine recovery. A full day off each week where you don't work on your goal. A weekend getaway. A week-long break when you're truly depleted. Our culture resists deep rest. We feel guilty. We worry we'll lose momentum. We think we can't afford the time. But here's the truth. You can't afford not to take this time. The cost of not resting is burnout, breakdown, or giving up entirely. Taking strategic rest keeps you in the game long-term. There's a beautiful concept in agriculture called letting fields lie fallow. Farmers discovered long ago that if you plant crops in the same field year after year without rest, the soil becomes depleted. The crops get weaker. Eventually, nothing grows. But if you let the field rest, plant nothing for a season, the soil regenerates. Nutrients return. The next planting yields even more abundance than before. You are not so different from soil. You need fallow periods. You need time when you're not producing, not achieving, not pushing toward goals. Just being. Just restoring. Intentional rest versus collapse. There's a big difference between choosing to rest and being forced to rest because you've completely depleted yourself. Intentional rest is strategic. You rest before you absolutely need to, which means the rest is actually restorative. You come back refreshed. Collapse is what happens when you ignore all signals until your body or mind forces you to stop. This kind of rest takes much longer to recover from and often comes with illness, injury, or complete burnout. The Buddhist approach is always intentional rest. You listen to your body's signals. You honor your limits. You rest as a practice, not as a last resort. Here are the signals that you need rest, not that you should quit. You feel physically exhausted most of the time. You're more irritable or emotional than usual. Tasks that used to be manageable feel overwhelming. You're making more mistakes or your work quality has declined. You can't remember the last time you felt excited about your goal. You're getting sick more frequently. Your sleep is disrupted. You feel numb or disconnected. These aren't signs of failure. They're your system's way of saying, I need restoration. Listen to this wisdom. Now, here's an important practice. Guilt-free rest. Many people rest, but spend the entire time feeling guilty about resting, which means they don't actually restore. They're physically stopped, but mentally still grinding. The Buddha taught letting go as a core practice. When you rest, truly let go. Give yourself full permission. Tell yourself, right now, my job is to rest. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is productive. Try this. When you take a rest period, set a clear boundary. For the next 3 hours, or day, or week, I am not working on this goal. I'm fully resting. Then honor that boundary completely. Don't check emails related to your goal. Don't brainstorm solutions. Don't feel guilty. Just rest. What you'll discover is that this complete rest is far more restorative than half resting while feeling guilty. And when you return to your work, you'll have more clarity, creativity, and energy than you would have if you'd pushed through. There's also a profound practice of active rest. This doesn't mean exercising or being productive. It means doing something that genuinely fills you up rather than depletes you. For some people, this is being in nature. For others, it's creating art. For others, it's spending time with loved ones. For others, it's solitude and silence. The Buddha himself would retreat into the forest for periods of solitude. He recognized that being around people, teaching, engaging, even in meaningful work, was depleting. He needed time alone in nature to restore. What restores you? Not what you think should restore you, or what restores other people, but what actually replenishes your specific energy. Make a list of activities that leave you feeling more alive, not less. Then schedule them regularly, not just when you're desperate. Another crucial element: rest without achievement. Our achievement-oriented minds want to turn everything into a goal, including rest. We want to optimize our rest, track our meditation minutes, achieve perfect sleep scores. But rest, by definition, is the absence of striving. It's being without becoming. It's enoughness without improvement. When you rest, practice just being. Not being better. Not being productive. Not being impressive. Just being alive. Just breathing. Just existing. This is profoundly countercultural and profoundly healing. The Buddha called this non-striving, and he considered it essential to awakening. There's a time for effort and a time for effortlessness. Both are necessary. Finally, let's talk about rest as preparation, not retreat. When you rest, you're not running away from your goal. You're preparing for the next phase of engagement with it. Think of an archer. Before shooting an arrow, they draw the bow back. To an observer, it might look like they're moving away from the target. But this backward movement is necessary to propel the arrow forward. Your rest is the drawing back of the bow. It feels like you're moving away from your goal, but you're actually gathering the force you need to move toward it more powerfully. When you understand this, rest becomes strategic rather than shameful. You're not giving up. You're gearing up. You're not being lazy. You're being wise. Here's your practice. Right now, ask yourself honestly. On a scale of 1 to 10, how depleted am I? If you're above a 6, you don't need to quit. You need to rest. Give yourself permission. Take the break. Honor your humanity. And know that resting now means you'll still be in the game later, when others who refused to rest have burned out completely. We now arrive at the fifth and final reminder, and it might be the one you need most when you can't see any results from your efforts. Your effort has value, even if you can't see results yet. This is one of the most challenging teachings to accept because everything in our culture conditions us to measure worth by visible outcomes. We want proof. We want results. We want to see that our efforts are working. And when we don't see these results, when weeks or months go by and nothing seems to change, we conclude that our efforts are worthless, that we're wasting our time, that we should give up. But the Buddha taught something radically different. He taught a principle called karma, though not in the Hollywood version most people know. Real karma, in Buddhist philosophy, simply means every action has consequences. Every cause has an effect. Every effort creates ripples. Nothing you do is lost. No genuine effort is wasted. Even when you can't see the results, even when it feels like you're pouring water into sand, something is happening beneath the surface. Think about a farmer planting seeds. He prepares the soil, plants the seeds, waters them consistently. For days, he sees nothing. For weeks, the ground looks exactly the same. If he judged his efforts by visible results, he would conclude he's wasting his time. But beneath the surface, invisible to his eyes, something extraordinary is happening. The seed is absorbing water, swelling, cracking open. Roots are extending down into the soil. A shoot is preparing to push upward. All of this crucial activity is happening where he can't see it. But it's real. It's essential. And it's all made possible by his consistent efforts, even when those efforts seemed to produce nothing. You are that farmer. Your consistent efforts, the days when you showed up despite not wanting to, the times you tried again after failing, the moments you pushed forward when everything in you wanted to quit, these are not wasted. They're seeds planted. They're roots growing. They're shoots preparing to break through the surface. The Buddha himself experienced this. After he achieved enlightenment, he faced a crucial question. Should he teach what he'd discovered, or should he just enjoy his own liberation in silence? His initial thought was that teaching would be pointless. People were too attached to their suffering to understand. His efforts would be wasted. Why try? But then he had a realization. He thought of a lotus pond. Some lotuses are deep underwater, far from blooming. Some are in the mud, not yet emerging. Some are near the surface, and some are ready to bloom. They just need a little sunlight. He realized that he couldn't know who was ready. He couldn't predict who would benefit from his teaching. All he could do was make the effort, plant the seeds, and trust that some would grow. And because he made that effort, because he didn't give up based on unpredictable outcomes, his teachings have now helped billions of people across 2,500 years. All because he chose to try even when the results were uncertain. Your efforts are like this. You don't know what they're creating. You don't know who you're becoming through this struggle. You don't know what capacities you're developing that you'll need later. You don't know what unexpected doors might open because you persisted. But just because you can't see the results doesn't mean they're not there. There's a profound teaching in Buddhism about the nature of cause and effect. Not every cause produces an immediate, visible effect. Some causes create conditions that take time to ripen. Some create effects so subtle you don't notice them at first. Some create effects far in the future. A teacher might work with a struggling student for months, seeing no progress, feeling like their efforts are pointless. Years later, that student becomes successful and credits that teacher as the turning point. The effect was delayed, but it was real. A person might work on developing patience through meditation for years, feeling like nothing is changing. Then they face a crisis that would have destroyed them before, and they respond with unexpected calm. the effect was invisible until the moment it mattered most. You might be developing capacities right now that you won't even recognize as valuable until you need them. You might be creating effects that won't be visible for months or years. You might be planting seeds that will bloom long after you've forgotten you planted them. This is why the Buddha emphasized process over outcome. He taught that you should focus on right effort, right action, right intention, and then release attachment to results. This doesn't mean you don't care about results. It means you recognize that results often come in their own time, through pathways you can't predict or control. Your job is to do your part, to plant seeds, to water them, to show up consistently, and then trust the process. There's a beautiful story in Zen Buddhism about a monk who spent decades copying sacred texts. One day, a visitor asked him, "How many people have read the texts you've copied? Has your work made any difference?" The monk replied, "I don't know, but every word I copy with care is itself complete. Every moment of sincere effort is its own reward. Whether anyone reads these texts is not for me to know." This is the practice, finding meaning in the effort itself, not just in the outcome. Recognizing that sincere, wholehearted effort has intrinsic value, regardless of visible results. When you practice this way, you become free. Free from the tyranny of needing constant validation. Free from measuring your worth by outcomes you can't fully control. Free from giving up just because you can't yet see the fruits of your labor. So how do you maintain faith in your efforts when you can't see results? How do you keep going when there's no visible progress? First, you need to understand the difference between leading indicators and lagging indicators. Lagging indicators are the final results, the achievement of your goal, the recognition, the success. These are what most people focus on. But leading indicators are the daily actions, the consistent efforts, the showing up. These are what you can control. When you feel like giving up because you don't see results, you're focusing on lagging indicators. You're looking for the harvest while you're still in the planting season. Instead, measure your success by leading indicators. Did you show up today? Did you do the work, regardless of how it felt? Did you maintain your integrity with the process? Did you learn something, even from failure? If the answer to these questions is yes, then you're succeeding, even if the final outcome hasn't arrived yet. The Buddha taught this as right effort, one of the steps in the Noble Eightfold Path. Right effort doesn't mean trying to control outcomes. It means consistently applying appropriate energy to the process, trusting that this consistency itself creates conditions for success. Think about compound interest. If you invest money regularly, you won't see much change at first. The first year, you might earn a tiny amount of interest. It feels insignificant. But if you keep investing consistently, year after year, something magical happens. The interest starts earning interest. The growth accelerates. What seemed insignificant in year 1 becomes powerful by year 10, extraordinary by year 20. Your efforts compound the same way. Each day you show up might feel insignificant in isolation. But these days add up. They create momentum. They build capacity. They establish patterns. And eventually, they reach a tipping point where visible results start flowing. The problem is, most people quit before they reach this tipping point. They invest for 6 months, see minimal returns, and conclude it's not working. But they're quitting right before the compound effect would have kicked in. There's a famous story about bamboo that perfectly illustrates this principle. Chinese bamboo is one of the most remarkable plants in nature. When you plant a Chinese bamboo seed, you water it and care for it consistently. In the first year, you see nothing above ground, just soil. In the second year, still nothing. Third year, nothing. Fourth year, nothing. In the fifth year, still nothing. A farmer might think they're wasting their time. They might think the seed was dead, that their efforts are pointless. Many would give up. But then, in the sixth year, something astonishing happens. The bamboo grows 90 feet in 6 weeks. 90 feet in 6 weeks, after 5 years of seeing nothing. Was the bamboo doing nothing for those 5 years? Of course not. It was developing a massive root system underground, roots that spread out in all directions, roots strong enough and extensive enough to support the rapid growth that was coming. But this crucial development was invisible. Someone judging by visible results would have concluded nothing was happening. You might be developing your root system right now. You might be building foundation that you can't see. You might be in year 5, right before everything breaks through. And if you give up now, all those years of root development will have been for nothing. Not because the roots weren't growing, but because you didn't stay in the game long enough to see them support your growth. The Buddha described this as drop by drop filling the water pot. He said, drop by drop is the water pot filled. Likewise, the wise person, gathering it little by little, fills themselves with good. Each day of effort is a drop. Each attempt is a drop. Each time you choose not to give up is a drop. One drop seems insignificant. It doesn't even cover the bottom of the pot. But drop after drop after drop, and eventually the pot fills. Not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily and surely. The question is, are you willing to keep adding drops even when the pot still looks empty? Are you willing to trust the process even when you can't yet see the results? Here's a practice to help with this. Keep an invisible progress journal. At the end of each day or week, write down progress that isn't visible in outcomes. I didn't see results today, but I showed up. That's building discipline. I failed at this attempt, but I learned what doesn't work. That's valuable information. I wanted to quit 5 times today, but didn't. That's strengthening resilience. I don't see external progress, but I notice I'm handling frustration better. That's character development. This practice trains you to recognize that progress comes in many forms, not just in visible achievements. You're growing even when you can't see it in outcomes. Another powerful concept is non-linear growth. We expect progress to be linear, a little better each day, steady improvement, predictable advancement. But real growth is almost never linear. It's periods of plateau where nothing seems to change, followed by sudden leaps forward. It's apparent setbacks that are actually set up for breakthroughs. It's invisible accumulation followed by visible manifestation. When you understand this, plateaus don't discourage you. You recognize them as part of the natural rhythm of growth. You're not stuck. You're integrating, consolidating, preparing for the next leap. The Buddha himself taught this. He described the path to enlightenment not as a steady upward climb, but as a journey with flat periods, difficulties, doubts, and then sudden insights that change everything. your path is the same. The fact that you're not seeing daily improvement doesn't mean you're not progressing. It might mean you're in a consolidation phase, integrating what you've learned, preparing for the next level. Trust this process. Keep adding drops to the pot. Keep watering the bamboo. Keep showing up for your practice. Because here's what the Buddha understood and what you need to know. The moment you give up is the moment all your previous efforts truly become wasted. Not because they weren't creating effects, but because you stopped before those effects could fully manifest. Every effort you've made so far is an investment. That investment is still there, still compounding, still creating conditions for success. But only if you stay in the game. The roots are growing, the pot is filling, the seeds are germinating. You just can't see it yet. But it's happening. Trust that it's happening. And keep going. Now let's step back and see how these 5 reminders work together to create a complete understanding of why giving up might be exactly the wrong choice right now. Reminder 1 taught you that suffering is part of the path, not evidence you're on the wrong path. When things get hard, it doesn't mean you've failed or chosen wrong. It means you're in the territory where real growth happens. Reminder 2 showed you that you are not your thoughts. The voice telling you to give up is just a thought, not truth. You are the awareness beneath that thought, and from that awareness, you have choice. Reminder 3 revealed that everything changes, including this difficult moment. Your current struggle is temporary, not permanent. What feels unbearable today will transform into something else tomorrow. Reminder 4 gave you permission to rest without quitting. Sometimes what feels like wanting to give up is actually just exhaustion asking for restoration. Rest renews your capacity to continue. Reminder 5 reminded you that your efforts have value, even when you can't see results. Seeds are growing beneath the surface. Roots are developing. Effects are rippling out in ways you can't yet perceive. Together, these 5 reminders create a framework for understanding your struggle in a completely different way. Instead of seeing difficulty as failure, you see it as the crucible of transformation. Instead of being controlled by your thoughts, you observe them with space and choice. Instead of believing this moment will last forever, you trust in the reality of change. Instead of pushing until you break, you honor your need for restoration. Instead of measuring success by visible results, you trust the value of consistent effort. This is the Buddhist approach to perseverance. It's not about gritting your teeth and pushing through everything. It's not about never questioning your path. It's not about ignoring your genuine needs. It's about seeing clearly, understanding deeply, acting wisely, trusting the process while being honest about your experience. Let me tell you what happens when you internalize these 5 reminders. You stop interpreting every difficulty as a sign to quit. You start asking, is this difficulty teaching me something? Is this growing me? Or is this genuinely wrong for me? You stop being terrorized by your own thoughts. When your mind says, you should give up, you recognize it as a thought, not a command. You create space to choose your response rather than automatically reacting. You stop catastrophizing about the future. When things are hard today, you don't project that hardness infinitely forward. You remember that everything changes, including your capacity and your circumstances. You stop feeling guilty about rest. You understand that strategic restoration is what allows you to stay in the game long term. You rest when you need to. Return when you're ready. And don't waste energy on shame. You stop needing constant visible proof that you're making progress. You trust the process. You focus on leading indicators you can control. You keep planting seeds even when you can't yet see the harvest. This creates a completely different relationship with your goals and with difficulty itself. You become someone who can endure longer, not because you're pushing harder, but because you're working smarter. You're aligned with reality instead of fighting against it. You become someone who can maintain faith without needing certainty, who can persist without needing constant validation, who can rest without guilt and work without exhaustion. You become, in Buddhist terms, someone walking the middle way, not too tight, not too loose, balanced between effort and ease, persistence and flexibility, striving and acceptance. And here's what's beautiful about this approach. Whether you ultimately succeed at your specific goal or not, you've developed capacities that will serve you for the rest of your life. You've learned to work with your mind instead of being its victim. You've learned to sit with discomfort without being destroyed by it. You've learned to trust processes that don't show immediate results. You've learned to distinguish between genuine misalignment and temporary difficulty. You've learned to honor your limits while still pushing your edges. These are skills that transcend any single goal. They're life skills, wisdom skills, resilience skills. So even if this particular path doesn't work out exactly as you hoped, you haven't wasted your time. You've been in training. You've been developing capacities. You've been becoming someone stronger, wiser, more capable. The Buddha taught that there are two kinds of benefits from practice: the benefits of the outcome and the benefits of the process. Most people only value outcome benefits, getting what they want, achieving their goal, reaching the destination. But process benefits are often more valuable. The person you become through persistent effort, the wisdom you develop through facing difficulty, the character you build through not giving up. These benefits are yours regardless of specific outcomes. This is why the Buddha could say that the path itself is the goal. Not because destinations don't matter, but because who you become on the path matters more than any specific achievement. When you understand this deeply, the question shifts from, "Should I give up on this goal?" to, "Am I becoming someone I'm proud of through this struggle?" If the answer is yes, if you're learning, growing, developing wisdom and strength even in the difficulty, then the struggle has value regardless of the outcome. And that value is yours to keep forever. So here you are, at a crossroads. You've been struggling. You've been thinking about giving up. And now you've encountered these 5 Buddhist reminders that are asking you to reconsider. What do you do next? How do you actually move forward from this moment? First, let's get honest about something. Reading these reminders doesn't magically make the difficulty disappear. You're still facing whatever challenge brought you here. It's still hard. You're still tired. The obstacles are still real. Buddhist wisdom doesn't promise to make life easy. It promises to help you see clearly and respond wisely. And sometimes, wise response means continuing despite difficulty. Sometimes it means changing your approach. And yes, sometimes it means letting go. The question is, how do you know which response is wise for you right now? Here's a framework based on Buddhist principles. First, create space for clarity. When you're overwhelmed and exhausted, your judgment is compromised. Everything looks worse than it is. Your mind catastrophizes. Your perspective shrinks. Before making any major decision about giving up or continuing, create space. This might mean taking a day off to rest and reflect. It might mean going for a long walk in nature. It might mean talking to someone you trust. It might mean meditating or journaling. Don't make life-changing decisions from a state of depletion. Rest first. Create space. Let clarity emerge. Second, examine your motivation. Why did you start this journey in the first place? What was the original vision that called to you? Sometimes, revisiting your initial motivation reignites your commitment. You remember why this matters. You reconnect with the deeper purpose beneath the surface struggle. But sometimes, you discover that your motivation has changed. What you wanted 6 months or 2 years ago might not be what you want now. And that's okay. People grow. Priorities shift. Letting go of a goal that no longer aligns with who you're becoming isn't failure. It's wisdom. The Buddha himself did this. He trained in extreme asceticism for years because he believed it would lead to enlightenment. Then he realized it wasn't working. He let go of that approach entirely and found a different way. Letting go of what isn't working isn't the same as giving up on what matters. Sometimes letting go of one path opens you to discover a better path to the same destination. Third, distinguish between strategic retreat and defeat. There's a concept in martial arts. Sometimes you step back to create better positioning for your next move. This isn't running away. It's tactical wisdom. Maybe you need to step back from your current approach, reassess, and find a different angle. Maybe you need to reduce the scale of your goal temporarily to build capacity. Maybe you need to pause to acquire skills or resources you're currently lacking. This is different from giving up entirely. It's adjusting your strategy while maintaining your commitment to the destination. Ask yourself, if I step back from this now, is it because I've genuinely learned it's not right for me? Or is it because I need to regroup and find a better approach? Fourth, consider the regret test. Imagine yourself 1 year from now, 5 years from now. You're looking back at this moment. Scenario A. You gave up. How do you feel? Is it relief? Peace? Freedom? Or is it regret? Do you wonder, what if? Do you wish you'd persisted a bit longer? Scenario B. You continued. How do you feel? Proud? Grateful? Stronger? Or resentful? Depleted? Like you wasted more time? Neither scenario is inherently right or wrong. But your emotional response to these scenarios tells you something important about what's actually true for you. If the thought of giving up brings relief, and the thought of continuing brings dread, that's information. If the thought of giving up brings regret, and the thought of continuing brings hope, that's different information. Fifth, consult your body, not just your mind. Your mind can rationalize anything. It can convince you to quit. It can convince you to continue. It's not always a reliable guide. But your body knows truth in a different way. When you think about giving up, how does your body respond? Does it relax? Or does it tighten? When you think about persisting, does your body feel energized or depleted? The Buddha taught that wisdom comes from integrating body and mind, not privileging one over the other. Your body carries wisdom your conscious mind might not have access to. Sixth, seek wise counsel. but make your own decision. Talk to people who know you well. Talk to people who have faced similar struggles. Talk to mentors or guides. But remember, no one else is living your life. No one else has your exact combination of values, circumstances, and resources. Other people can offer perspectives, but ultimately, you're the only one who can decide what's right for you. The Buddha encouraged his students to test teachings against their own experience. Don't believe something just because a teacher says it, or a text claims it, or even because I've written it here. Test it. See if it's true in your actual lived experience. Apply this same principle to your decision. Listen to advice, but ultimately, trust your own deepening wisdom about what's right for you. Finally, remember that this decision isn't permanent. If you decide to continue and it still doesn't work out, you can reassess later. If you decide to step back and later realize you want to return, you can do that too. Life isn't as black and white as our minds make it. You don't have to choose between never give up on anything and quit immediately when things get hard. There's a middle way: assessing honestly, acting wisely, and remaining flexible as new information emerges. The Buddha taught what he called beginner's mind, approaching each moment fresh, without being trapped by past decisions or future projections. Just because you chose to continue yesterday doesn't mean you must continue today if conditions have genuinely changed. Just because you wanted to quit last week doesn't mean you must quit now if you've regained clarity and energy. Each moment is new. Each moment offers a choice. You're not locked into anything. Let's say, after all this reflection, you've decided to continue. You're not giving up. Not yet. Maybe not ever. You're going to keep going with this path, this goal, this struggle. But how do you continue wisely? How do you avoid the trap of just gritting your teeth and pushing harder, which will eventually lead to the same burnout that made you want to quit in the first place? Here's how to continue in a way that's sustainable, that honors these Buddhist principles, that allows you to persist without destroying yourself. First, redefine what success looks like on a daily basis. Stop measuring your day by whether you achieved your ultimate goal. Start measuring it by whether you showed up, applied effort, learned something, or grew in some way. Success today might be: I worked on this for 1 hour with full presence. That's it. That's enough. You don't need visible progress. You don't need breakthrough results. You just need consistency. The Buddha taught that enlightenment comes from thousands of small moments of practice, not from one dramatic event. Your goal is the same. It comes from thousands of small moments of effort, not from one heroic push. Second, build in regular checkpoints. Don't just commit to continuing indefinitely without assessment. Instead, say, I'm going to give this my best effort for the next month, and then I'll reassess. This creates a container. You're not committing to struggle forever. You're committing to a defined period of sincere effort. And at the end of that period, you'll honestly evaluate. Is this working? Am I growing? Should I continue, adjust, or let go? These checkpoints prevent the trap of mindlessly persisting in something that genuinely isn't working. They allow you to continue while maintaining wise discernment. Third, adjust your approach based on what you've learned. If you've been struggling because you're using the wrong method, continuing with the same method is just stubborn, not wise. The Buddha modeled this perfectly. When extreme asceticism didn't work, he didn't just do more of it. He changed his entire approach. He found the middle way. Maybe you need to try a different technique. Maybe you need to find a teacher or mentor. Maybe you need to break your goal into smaller pieces. Maybe you need to address a foundational issue you've been avoiding. Continuing doesn't mean doing the exact same thing that hasn't been working. It means maintaining your commitment to the goal while being flexible about the path. Fourth, celebrate small wins and signs of progress. Your mind is biased toward noticing what's wrong, what hasn't happened yet, what you still lack. This is the negativity bias we discussed earlier. Counter this by deliberately noticing what is working, what is improved, what you have accomplished. Keep a wins journal. Each day, write down at least one thing, even something tiny, that represents progress. I didn't quit today, even though I wanted to. I tried a new approach instead of doing the same thing that wasn't working. I rested when I needed to, instead of pushing until I broke down. I asked for help instead of suffering alone. These are wins. They deserve recognition and celebration. Over time, this practice rewires your brain to see progress instead of just problems. Fifth, find your community or support system. The Buddha created the Sangha, a community of practitioners, because he understood that transformation is easier when you're not alone. Find others who are on similar journeys. Share your struggles. Celebrate each other's progress.